So you guys wanted to see all of the fails that go into the sketchbook, and this is one of the bigger ones. I was going to do a review on these paints that I was using, but they were so bad, I just didn't even include that part of the video. But these were the Gotti deal, I still don't know how to pronounce that, acrylic paints, and I have used their watercolors, and I really liked those. They have some paint pens, I liked those. I've used their markers in the past, they were pretty decent. And then I don't know what the deal was with this paint set, but these were awful. They were really, really weird. So I decided I wanted to try to paint this guy. This is one that I did a while ago digitally. I always really liked the concept. It has a couple of issues with it, but we'll ignore those for now. So I went ahead and printed it out and copied it into my sketchbook and decided that this would be a good way to use some paints. And I think what I've also decided is that since I have better material and paper for wet media, I'm just going to stop trying to put it into this sketchbook. It doesn't work. It's a sketchbook, obviously. So this paint that I'm using here, I think it's got the consistency of like whipped cream. It's really weird. It was very light, very airy. And I tried to use this right out of the tube, and you can just see how it stuck more to the brush than to the paper, and then when it finally went onto the paper, it dried before I could smear it around. It was so bizarre. And I had kind of assumed that, I don't know, it would be like my other paints that I use. I use a lot of Apple Barrel, I use a lot of folk art, just really basic, not so great paints, but that's what I'm used to using. A lot of times when I get more expensive paints, they behave in ways I just don't really expect them to. That was the problem that I had with the simple paints. These don't behave like that either. These just behave very weirdly. And what I have kind of decided or figured out, I'm not sure how you really want to look at it, after going back and looking at the listing again, is that these probably aren't meant to be painted with. I feel like these are for finger painting. I feel like these are the paints that you would smear your kids' hands with and then make a shirt for grandma or something like that. That's the kind of weird sticky consistency they are. I didn't figure that out until later. But what I wound up doing with some of the other colors was mixing it in with some of my acrylic medium, and I am now all out of matte acrylic medium because it all went into trying to fix these paints. Even that didn't work. And you'll see at the end how I didn't want just this really ugly fail, so I just painted over it and did some horrible things. And I don't remember if I took a picture of it. I will have to look and see. I definitely didn't scan it. But if I did take a picture, I will put that up on Patreon so patrons can see what it actually looked like at the end. Because on top of being just horrible and awful to work with, it was also gloss paint. And I don't use gloss paint because I can't see what I'm doing with it. And you can really see that here even, how one of my work lights just was constantly reflecting off of it. And all I can see are the kind of warps and distortions in the paper as it tries to deal with being covered in paint. So after a certain while, I quit, not because I didn't like how it was turning out. I quit because I couldn't see what I was doing anymore. And it was just really bad and awful to work with. And I think at this point I had started blending it with some of the acrylic medium. Yeah, this was definitely what was going on there, because it's all of a sudden now very transparent. And transparent paints are fine because that meant I could be a little bit less cautious with how I was using it. I was able to kind of paint over the lines and just do it more quickly. And that takes out a lot of frustration. I would still have to go back over the lines, but at least I could see them now. I kind of tend to do multiple layers anyway when I'm doing acrylics, but these ones were just so awful to work with. At this point, I couldn't even see where the lines were on the page because the paint was just so glossy and was reflecting everything back. And then I'd mix some of that dark brown in with a matte medium, and even mixing in the matte medium really didn't help. You can see as it dries and I put on more coats that it just stays the same. It's just glossy and horrible to see, and I hated it. I hated it so much. So much. But you guys, I know you wanted to see fails. I have asked questions about this before on the community page if you guys wanted to see fails, so here we go. Here's another fail in the sketchbook. I haven't had the chance to work on the sketchbook too much lately. Between the Kickstarter and opening back up for commissions, that's all been taking most of my time. I kind of realized, though, that the idea of finishing this all in one year, even without other obligations, probably wasn't going to happen. And between that and some of the other issues that I have been having as well, just with my family life and at home, it just kind of got derailed a little bit. So I think I've only done about 20 pages so far, and I started this, in September? But I have been drawing more often, not every single day, but a lot more often. I have drawn more this year already since I started doing this than I have in the last decade. And I don't know if I really talked about this yet. I've got a couple minutes I can fill up here. But I used to do commission work full time. That used to be my job, and I got very burnt out on it about 10 or 11 years ago. And basically what happened was I was doing art every single day for a lot of time for clients that just had no respect for me as a person and me as an artist. And that's something a lot of people wind up running into, I think. So it reached a point where I just got so overwhelmed with having to redo and change the same piece 4, 5, 6, 7 times because I didn't have it in my terms of service that I wouldn't do that. And it didn't really occur to me that I could put that in my terms of service. So it got to a point where I just closed down everything and threw all of my supplies into boxes and didn't look at them for years. So finally wanting to get back into this, a lot of it is just having to relearn how to do what I used to do. I've been going absolutely nuts trying to do a colored pencil piece because I definitely think that I'm forgetting something in how I used to do that technique. That or just the pencils have changed so much over the last few years that it's just irreparable. But at this point, I gave up. I couldn't see what I was doing. The paint was terrible to work with. So I decided that what I was going to do instead was just cover up the page and put something down. Because I didn't want pages that were half full or half completed. I at least wanted something on each page that looks like I had put some effort into it. And you can also see down there at the bottom, that's not a big glop of wet paint, it's a hole in the page, because for some reason, I have all of a sudden been having issues with my tapes that I use tearing through my paper. It's been happening on my watercolor paper, on my Bristol, on my sketch paper. I don't know what's been going on. I don't know if it's different tape. I don't know if it's different humidity in the room or what's going on, but it's been driving me nuts. So you'll be seeing a lot of torn paper, and I'm still trying to figure out why that's happening, but here we go. This is just kind of an absolute nothing page. I was playing with some masking tape and trying to do something that even this one didn't quite work, but it covered up the shame that was the last one. If I can find the full image that was on the page before I covered it up, I will put that up on Patreon. I doubt I saved it though. I kind of don't think that I did. But here we go. Here's just some absolute garbage of a project that does not really deserve to exist. Hope you enjoy it, because it's bad. But, you know, hey, at least I finished a page. And that's something, right?